I want to thank our sponsor, the Dance Studio. Brandon Halleck and his incredible studio is such a gift to our community. I can't express the joy and fun I had when I was getting my lessons with him, learning everything from the tango to the cha-cha. It is so much fun. It's such a great way to just work out, get your energy out, and frankly, it's good for your mind. And I tell you, we've also had our family get together there and celebrate birthdays. And it's just a wonderful gift to our community that we have this ballroom dance studio. So give them a call and tell them Pinpoint sent you. Welcome to Pinpoint. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode where we are going to have a powerful conversation with my friend, Caroline Cook. Caroline, I'm so excited, is going to join us today to share her healing story of how faith, hope, and love played such an integral part in the healing for her overcoming story of an eating disorder. This is such a powerful conversation. I'm really grateful that she's willing to talk about it with us. And so Caroline, just as an introduction, is joining us today from Nashville. She is a wonderful wife and mother. She's a published author, speaker, and advocate for helping people heal and know more about this significant disease and addiction of an eating disorder. So Caroline, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Libby. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, great. Well, listen, I want to just dive in and I want to just show this book that you wrote. It's called Hungry. Okay. I'm going to hold it up for our audience. So this is how our friendship all began. A couple years ago, Caroline was writing her book, Hungry, at the same time I was publishing. We both were publishing about the same time when I published my book, Commanding Reverence. And so this is how our friendship started. And you know, when I read your book, what I thought was just so powerful is the theme from beginning to end is the word hungry. It's the common theme that you speak of. And it's really what you say, that we are born hungry. So how did you go? Please share with us how you went from being hungry to, you know, just the shift where this turned into a disorder. Can you share that with us?
Oh, sure. Well, yes, I love the word hungry and how you're right. It's the overarching theme, and really we're just another word you could say for hungry is needy.
Yeah.
Needy, incomplete. I mean, we were born, and I believe created to need something outside of ourselves. And really we're hungry. I believe, and you do too, I know, we've got that God-shaped vacuum in our heart.
Yes.
So I do. I have a Bible study that I teach, and I named us Cute Dumb Sheep. That's because I remember, I can very easily during the day come up with thoughts of how powerful I am or how complete I am and how but really when I remember that I'm just a sheep in need of a shepherd that's just looking for grass to eat, that positions my heart and mind correct for the day.
Yeah.
But back to your question of how I got kind of from hungry to where I am now, that's a long journey.
Yes.
And a journey that really I entered recovery a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was let's see, I guess I was about 22 when I really stepped into full day-to-day recovery. And I work with a lot of women who are going through recovery from addiction with more drugs and alcohol, though, than eating disorder. And I always say to them, look, it is step by step. I mean, even though I was recovered when I was, let's say, 25, my recovered life at 25 and my recovered life now at 50, I'm just way further down the road.
Right.
Well,
I do. Well, and I think that something you just said is that you work with mostly women or have different addictions, alcohol, drugs, and it could be other addictions. And this is what was, I thought, so just it got me is when I'm learning more about eating disorders, which was your addiction. I mean, I never really thought of an eating disorder as an addiction, which maybe seems like common sense and that it should be, but there's so much more when you get to the root cause, and it is an addiction, and it's an addiction with food. It's just a, fill in the blank with something else. And so I thought that just struck me
Yeah.
that, there, so then therefore, because I mean, one of the stories you tell in your book is about, and I can't remember who it was now, um, father or grandfather, a family member that was basically like, just cut it out, just stop it. And I
Yeah, my dad.
thought, well, and that's been a little bit of my mentality. And I admit it, it's not good, but I've kind of just looked at someone that has this challenge that they deal with, whether it's anorexia, which was your case, or it could be bulimia, or someone that just is an emotional eater. Okay, why? Why
Yeah.
are we doing that? And so that gets down to the root cause, because as you said earlier, we are in need. So we're filling the hole, not with the Lord and the Holy Ghost,
Mm.
not with his word, not trusting him,
Mm.
that we revert to ourselves. And that
Mhm.
can be based in what? Fear. And in your case, which is so much more, familiar to me because it speaks to me too, but some of the control. So I suffered and struggled with that too, but I didn't have an eating disorder per se, but I had other challenges.
Sure.
So it's like, how does that even happen?
Well, and my dad did say to me, he's a doctor, and so there was this false perception that he should know how to help me and treat
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
And he sat me down and told me to cut it out, which of course just infuriated me that he thought that was going to fix it. But
Yeah.
what's so ironic, and I find myself doing it over the last 20 years I've been parenting, is I say it to my kids,
Yeah.
just get it out, not for, necessarily an addiction, but other things when they misbehave or aren't getting their homework in. I'm like, will you cut that out? Like, I think
Yeah.
that comes so naturally to me to want to tell people just to get in line and make my life easier,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah,
Just
just
stop
be
making
done
me
with
mad.
it. I know, well,
Yes.
that just seems to be the easier thing to do. And I think that's where it's like you just say, okay, this is easy. But it's not. It is an
Yeah.
addiction and there is a root cause. And we
Yeah.
don't necessarily look at an eating disorder as something that is maybe as on the scale, if we're like, and I'm speaking for myself, there may be other people that are listening to this that are thinking, well, that's not how I see it, and I would understand that, but I'm
Mhm.
speaking for me, that I am so grateful that you've written this book and that you are speaking about it, and are an advocate, because I feel like it's bringing a subject and having, for us to have a conversation and really be able to start recognizing some of the signs and how we got there, especially as parents. That's just new thinking for me.
Well, I now work with a wonderful woman here in town in Nashville that her specialty is counseling uh, mostly young girls and women with eating disorders. And recently I said to her, can you have an eating disorder without first having disordered eating? Okay. So,
Wow.
and she said, no, you have to have disordered eating first. That is always the precursor that can lead to an eating disorder.
Wow.
So I do think, like, and I appreciate you saying that you're glad I'm an advocate, because I do think there needs to be one.
Yeah.
And if we think of it that way, like, okay, so not everyone who has disordered eating will fall into an eating disorder, but that is something to really, it's a slippery slope. And I think as friends and as parents, as grandparents, whatever, neighbors, we ought to have our antenna up for that,
Mm-hmm.
because the longer I think of eating disorders like a hole that you're digging.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer you're digging down, the further down you go, really the harder and longer the journey is of getting out of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I I've known lots of girls, some of them very close to me, that got pretty darn close to a full blown eating disorder, but they were able to get some counseling and some support before it got that bad. And really, that is your rate of recovery is just going to be so much better if you get it
Mm-hmm.
get there before it accelerates.
Well, I have to say, as you're speaking, and also when I read your book, and I'm admitting this, and it's the truth, is I started to feel compelled, like, oh my goodness, is that me? Is that me? Is that me? And in one of my prior episodes, we talked about the body as a temple and even just anxiety. And I have been able to admit, and I'll admit it here too to you, that I think I was maybe in that group
Mhm.
of the disordered eating for
Yeah.
a season because it was the,
Most
well,
people have
I
been.
need to change how I eat, or, and it wasn't with the mindset of necessarily because I want to be thin or I want to lose weight. But then again, there's that voice that was like, I want to not, and it all has to do with me being postmenopausal is when it really shifted,
Yeah.
or to make me feel better in my jeans, or maybe if I look better, I'll feel better, or if I'm thinner, I'll look better or feel better, all those battles. But it also kind of started too when I changed my eating to healthy eating.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, well, I can't eat that. There was nothing to eat. And it interfered with my being able to go to a dinner party, or it could be a wedding, or just out to dinner with friends. It could be anything outside of the home. It would take over my joy of, well, I can't
Mhm.
do this. And then it became not fun to cook, not fun to eat. And I'm just grateful because I think in my personal journey, what helped me was the fact that I was already down the road in my walk with the Lord, that I knew there was this inner voice like, this isn't good. This isn't how
Yeah.
you're designed to enjoy food. And this can't go on. I can't just eat the things at home. I mean, it's just it got to be where the pendulum had gone so far over here. It was more about I wanted to eat. It's just I could only eat certain things that were
Sure.
grass fed or pasture raised or not in seed
Yeah.
oils and da da da. And it was like, okay, I can't always control that.
Yeah.
So it's like, or well, get me the pizza, but no tomato sauce because that makes me feel this way. And don't do this and add this. So it's like in your book when you say, just order me whatever, I'll just be
Yeah.
fine. I'm trying to. I've actually gotten to that point. Although my husband's super sensitive about asking me, which is just loving. What would you
Yeah.
like? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you do have a preference. But I really love that you said that about disordered eating because I think we can really make that a god.
Yeah. But what, like you just were saying, the first step is admitting that, we're constantly going to need, it's the repentance part. It's kind of like, we're, I don't want to always think about that. Help me not to think about that.
Right.
I look, this is part of being human,
Yeah.
and what Courtney and I talk about a lot too is, I mean, the antithesis or the opposite of anorexia is not obesity.
Right.
I say the opposite of anorexia is not fat; it's free.
Right.
It's freedom. We certainly are not advocating, so eat whatever you want. I don't care what it is, just cheeseburger and fries for everybody. No,
Right. Right.
we, especially the way we look, you and I look at the body that God made it. We are to take care of it. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
And I know I feel better when feel strong.
Right.
And it just frees up if I don't have to worry about my physical self, then I have more energy and more mental space for the big stuff, like the people in my life
Right.
and doing what I do well.
Well, your
So,
purpose for the kingdom. I mean, why
yeah,
God created us to do
yeah,
that. Well, I feel like this is so powerful. And one of the things we've just kind of touched on that I think is important to go back to is how do we get there? Why does food, there's something in the root cause, and I'm sure it's absolutely different for every one of us.
sure.
It can be a word, it could be make the team, feel accepted, be the best. What's the core of that for me? I think it was I needed to feel love from somewhere that I maybe was afraid I wasn't getting it after my dad died at an early age. So I had this it's up to me. I can count on me. I'll, overachieve and control and do it my way and, all these other little things. So for you, I know it was a little bit of that, not because you had a loss of a family member, but just that I'm going to excel and compete and achieve and excel and all the things. So, I don't know how, because I know God doesn't design us to be that, our own little gods,
Mm-hmm.
but we have an innate desire somewhere. So, I mean, like,
Yeah.
how do we get, what's the point that it, like I said, it's different for everyone, but I feel like there's that root cause.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. And that's almost what makes it a challenge is it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I get a lot of phone calls now from all around the country,
Yeah.
moms, wanting to know what to do. And I wish there was a blanket answer, but really
Right.
it's so specific to that person. When I started going down that road, my disordered eating turned into a full blown eating disorder. I'd say the catalyst was I wanted to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
I saw my road ahead, going into senior year in high school and college and life and everything. And I thought, I need to get this right. You get one shot
Right.
to do this. So I wanted to be the best I could be. And I had all these memories, very strong memories of when I was, going through puberty. And I remember overnight, my body just kind of shot up and my baby weight fell off. And I looked very, I looked according to everyone around me. Oh my gosh, Caroline, what have you been doing? You look so good. Da, 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 da. And I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I just, and
So
this
you
is
liked you liked what you heard and how that felt when you
for
heard those
sure. I
compliments. Yeah.
mean, part of me thought, well, golly, how bad did I look before? I got so much
Oh my
praise.
goodness. Yes. I think we've all been through that. Yeah.
Well, I really advise people to just try not to make so many comments about physical bodies because
Right.
even the praise, it's nice, it's compliments. I mean, we all have heard the grandfather that's like, oh my gosh, you look so good, if you lost 100 pounds, and all the grandmothers are
Yeah.
hitting like, please be quiet.
Yeah.
They're trying to be nice.
Yeah.
It really accentuates a young person's just thinking, wow, why are you giving me so much praise now? Like, it's just a real currency, and
Right.
and we have to accept that. That
Yeah.
is part of being on this planet.
Right.
Is God did make people all different shapes and sizes and hair color, and there are supermodels and there are not. There's
Yeah.
That's the way it is. But that was something I could control, and I remembered how much praise I got, and I thought, well, that sure felt good. And it was just this, I didn't even plan it, Libby. It was just, I just
Yes.
started eating less. And guess what? When you start, I was starting to become addicted, and I was obsessed with eating less, obsessed with minimizing the amount of calories I was eating a day. And that became a drug for me.
Right.
It was fun. You
Mm.
have to acknowledge the fact that it's a pretty cool rush at first. Maybe you can equate it similar to someone starting drugs or something. You all of a sudden you feel good,
Yeah.
do for a bit,
Yeah.
for a bit.
Yeah.
So
Until.
that is how I got from thinking about it to actually doing it. And then what I say was at a certain point, it's like just a prison. It's like a cage that just got me. And once I was in the cage, I really didn't know how to get out of it without professional help.
Well, which I have to like teaser for those of you who I hope go out and buy the book because it's
Yeah.
really good. I have to say that you were even competitive about that
Oh,
when you're not even inpatient help, you're outpatient. You're like, wait, I didn't even like do this good enough. I need to do
I
this. Like,
know.
give me a minute. That was too funny. Like, I got to do this better so that I can be inpatient.
Oh,
Like, what
yeah.
the heck?
I thought I had failed anorexia. I
Yeah.
was so
It's just
embarrassed.
like,
I told the doctor who said, you're going to start tomorrow of outpatient. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not even a good enough anorexic to be in
yeah,
the
like you did
hospital.
all that and didn't even
Wow.
get the full. Yeah, I
No.
know, which is so crazy. But
Yeah.
ultimately, like when you think about it now, obviously you can laugh at yourself, but I think it's so powerful to be able to be that raw and to,
Yeah.
when you're talking to people, because you know that someone's picking up on that and thinking, okay, I need to check myself. I need to check myself to figure out, like, why am I thinking this, or, where am I on this journey? And
Yeah.
frankly, it's really a manifestation of something going on in our heart and emotions.
Absolutely.
And for someone, it might be an eating disorder, which does not get enough talk. I don't think it doesn't get enough of the airways. And I'm really so, again, excited to be talking about this with you. I feel like right now, nationally, which is so, so important, we are hearing about, fentanyl and drugs, and certainly alcohol. These things, I mean, even prescription drugs,
Yes.
get so much attention, and they should. But whether it's food, smoking, I mean, there's a myriad of things
Yeah.
that are grabbing our attention, that we're using as the little guide. That is, I love also how, because this podcast is all about the Lord and faith and hope and love, that you are currently walking in faith, and there was a season of hope, and that you learn to know that the God to love is not yourself or food or your body,
Mm-hmm.
but the
And I
Lord.
and I loved I loved God so much in the middle of that. And I think that's important for people to
Yes.
know. I mean, the ladies I work with at the next door here, so many of them love Jesus so much. They just can't get out of their stuff, or they're working on it. They're
Yeah.
working on it. So I think God in his kindness just wouldn't let me live in that. And I'm so thankful
Mhm.
he just kept pursuing me, because that that's knowing who God is, but not experiencing it. I
Yeah.
knew I loved him. I knew he was true, but I also knew I was serving another little God, like you're saying, in his place. And that was stealing my joy, my peace, and really, oh, I couldn't do what he wanted me to do.
Well, and that just touches on something I think is really important that needs to be said. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Apple House. Tom and his staff at the Apple House in Terre Haute have just been amazing with helping my husband and I do all our landscape. This is where we go to get our seasonal pots, all our flowers for our garden, our front porch, all the things that make spring wonderful. To just experience their customer service is far and above. And I just thank you so much for your sponsorship. And you all just need to go to the Apple House and let them help you, and tell them Pinpoint sent you.
Okay.
Being a Christian, a follower of the Lord, like you said, you share in your book, from a young age, you were very involved, even in junior high, high school, college, in the midst of your disease.
Mm-hmm.
You were very involved in your church and young life groups, or what have you. It may have been something else, but definitely Bible studies.
Ah,
You
yeah.
were loving the Lord, and right before you had to go into your outpatient, you were going to be a camp counselor at a Christian camp. And it's evident even in college, while you were in the midst of, this, before you started your healing, definitely still chasing Jesus. So I think that what's so powerful to hear about that is that the enemy is going to run after those of us that he wants to stop from serving the Lord. We're a target.
Yes.
And you tell a story about, the Lord is saying, like, that what you're doing isn't right, but the influence of the enemy, and the temptation, and I mean, he tempted Jesus. Why wouldn't he tempt you and me?
Mm-hmm.
And he's tempting you with what he knows is weak for you at that time. So I think it's so powerful that you share that.
Well,
Listen, being a lover of the Lord does not mean you're exempt
correct.
from
Yeah.
being
And I mean,
attacked.
even so, that I recovered from anorexia for sure, and live, praise God in that. But there have been other things over I'm 50. So even since then, I'll tell you a couple of things that I feel like they did not become addictions, but they were good things. But I
Right.
put too much of my hope in it, like my family.
Yes.
I
I'm guilty of
got
that.
married and lived here in Nashville, and I immediately just thought, wait a minute, why am I not in Texas? It's like I was so in love with West that I forgot that I wanted to be near my all my family in Texas. And I was so sad.
Hmm.
And you know, it depends who I talk to. Some people would say, oh, will you get him to move you back to Texas?
Yes.
You need to
I've
go
had
back
people say that
there.
to me about my husband moved me from Dallas
Yes.
to I'm now an Indiana Hoosier
Yeah.
living in the
Yeah.
country. It's the real Green Acre story. And they're like,
Yeah.
why didn't he just move to Dallas? You know? So
Well,
I
and I still remember some of the people that told me some tough stuff, but they were right. They This one person in particular, I remember her saying, Caroline, what you're really telling West is he's not enough. And I
mm,
think this could be really dangerous for
right.
your marriage. And that was right. That was
Hmm.
right. I was putting too much of my hope in, just then I get to be with everybody there. And um anyway,
I understand that. I do.
yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying going to Texas would have been wrong. It's just where was my heart was just zoned in on that being the only thing that'll make me happy,
Right.
you know,
Well, you hit the nail on the head is what makes you happy is not other people. And
external. Yes.
yes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we all live in and we'll continue to. We're
Mhm.
not home yet, but
Yeah,
I'm with people all the time that if I can just move out of this house into that house,
right.
if I can just, lose that last 20 pounds, if I can just meet the right guy. And I've actually realized I've been fantasizing about grandchildren for a while now. I don't have anybody married or anything, but recently I've been like, oh, I think I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if I have that, then I can see.
Yes.
I just think as humans, we are longing for heaven is what we are, and we're
Mhm.
trying to find things on this earth that will just in our what we think will happen will just make us peaceful, will make us
So
complete,
true.
will make us rest. And you know, again, we're just sweet little sheep walking around looking for grass. Like, bless our hearts, we're not going to get it here.
Right.
But the first step is just admitting that, Lord,
Right.
help me to not always long for something different than what you have me in. Let me be
So powerful.
content.
Yes, that's so powerful. Okay, you have shared some amazing, amazing words, and I just appreciate that so much. Before we end, I want to ask you, is there anything that you share when you're speaking? Because I know you do a lot of speaking.
Yeah.
And is there something that you talk about or share that we haven't covered? We've covered a lot. So I'm
Yeah.
putting you on the spot because there may be we've covered most everything. But if there's something you want to just impart or share that we haven't touched on that you really feel like our listeners would really benefit from hearing, I would love for you to share.
Okay. Well, thank you. And see, I don't always talk in a space that is faith forward, so this is really fun to get to talk to you about it I mean, I go into high schools and colleges
Right.
and I want to be respectful of my audience. So one of the things that I do talk about though, and I like there's a smaller percentage of people who are actively in an eating disorder, but I know that everyone I'm talking to at least knows one or two people that's struggling with that. So the thing that I like to say is eating disorders are contagious. But you know what
Mm-hmm.
else is contagious? Not having one. So you can be the change.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Moms, we are really influential with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Friends, you are really influential. I remember this one girl when I was at Vanderbilt. We went to this place called Calypso Cafe, and everyone went there, and we all got the same really, healthy salad. And this girl, still to this day, I don't even remember her name, but I remember she ordered beef nachos. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's so cool that she could, like, that was so foreign to me that someone who is a normal, you know, a small, but, the world would have said, oh, she must work out all the time and work diet all the time. She got beef nachos. And I loved it. I thought that was so cool. And obviously that did something to me and made me think I'd love to be able to just eat something that's not necessarily in the diet category.
Yes.
And I'm, it's not all, it really has little to do with what we eat, but what that showed me is her freedom of just not stressing about fat free this or non fat or no dressing or whatever. It was cool. It was
Yeah.
cool. And I think we can do that. I
Yeah.
think we can stretch ourselves sometimes to just, well, make that food not be something you're constantly thinking about,
Right.
because if that's all I'm thinking about, again, I don't have as much mental space or time or energy to focus on loving someone else well.
Right.
So I just think that we have to start with ourselves.
Yes.
Is there anything we could do? Do we need to repent? Do we need to say, Lord, forgive me?
Probably.
I've got it. Probably, yes. And it's just cool to know that we affect everybody we're around, you
That's so
know?
true. That's so true. And I think about just that point alone, just that when we see someone that's struggling,
Mm-hmm.
for example, whoever's listening,
Yeah.
for those of you listening because you love me or you love Caroline, we thank you. And you may be thinking you don't have an eating disorder. What does this have to do with me? But to your point, we know someone that may be having disordered eating.
Mm-hmm.
We know someone, if it hasn't affected us, that it's affecting them, that we have been now better equipped by reading your book, hearing this podcast, having awareness. That's just such a benefit, and I just really appreciate that you are saying that, because I think that's a powerful message, that it's not just about the eating. It can be fill in the blank something else, but it starts maybe, if it's not with you, it's with someone else, and just to be able to recognize that.
Well,
And
we do obviously live in a culture that values very much what we look like.
yeah,
And that is what it is. That is what it is. But maybe again, we can be someone who doesn't constantly focus only on that
yeah,
with our friends, with our kids that we see,
yeah,
just to look in their eyes and say, I'm just so glad to see you.
yes,
I love seeing your beautiful smile.
right.
I
Your
hope,
heart, yeah, you're
and
good.
not just, I think we have a tendency just to look somebody up and down and assess how they're, we've just got to get over ourselves.
Yes,
But
we
when
did.
you're
Well,
in the casket,
yeah,
no one's talking about your dress size.
yes. Well, and that hits the nail on the head. Is it's really not about us. We're here for God's glory. We're here for Him. He put us here. He created us
Yes.
for joy and for the kingdom. And you are definitely doing kingdom work, talking about this and bringing the subject to light. And that's the beautiful thing about your story. And we all have one, is that we can now take that and disciple. So I just
Yeah.
want to thank you. And
Oh,
then I close each episode with a pearl of wisdom. And I'm going to borrow a scripture that Caroline put in her book, but it's Mark 9:23 and 24, where for those who believe, all things are possible. I believe, but help my unbelief. And I just think that wisdom, that scripture, it's the truth, it's real. And I just think that um, when I read that Caroline put that, I just thought, this is my pearl of wisdom, because I think in all our circumstances, from an eating disorder, addiction, to just getting through a trial or a struggle in life, because we're going to have them, to depend on the word, and that is such a perfect word from the Lord. I feel like to close this episode. So thank you for joining us. And Caroline, thank you for your time, and thank you for your heart, and for sharing your testimony and your story.
well, I am very grateful for you for reading it and telling more people about it. And I do think that it's an important book, and I already know it's helped some people out there, and I'm so grateful for that.
Well, and it will help more. And we're going to have in our show notes, we'll have a way for you to contact Caroline and order a copy of Hungry. And I'm going to hold it up again for you. hungry. And it's such a wonderful book. And thank you again. And we'll see you on the next episode of Pinpoint.